In this lesson, we're going to begin to look at microbial metabolism. What we mean by metabolism is basically all of the reactions that occur within a living organism. And so this means that would include reactions that are breaking things down, and it's also going to include the other side of it where we're actually building more complex molecules. So why do cells perform specific chemical reactions? Well, they do have different reasons for it. First of all cells are going to require nutrients for building purposes. So if they require nutrients for building purposes, they're going to have to harvest or collect those nutrients, and they would collect those nutrients from other molecules, and that would involve chemical reactions. And then the other main reason is that all cells require energy for building. So at the same time they're collecting nutrients for building, they're also going to need to collect energy, and the collecting of that energy is also going to involve chemical reactions. So we will have lots of chemical reactions that are taking place inside of cells and inside of microbes pretty much on an everyday, every moment basis. Our reactions that we do have, they're going to fall into two categories. We have what are called catabolic reactions, and then we also have the anabolic side. Catabolic are going to be reactions that break molecules down, so they're breaking molecules into smaller itty-bitty pieces. And the reason why they're going to break down molecules into smaller pieces is really because when they do that, there will be energy that is released during that process. Those types of reactions, because they release energy, we do call them exergonic processes or exergonic reactions. The anabolic reactions are really going to be just the opposite of this, because the anabolic reactions are going to be building complex molecules. So they will be taking smaller pieces, assembling them together so that they get something more complex. And that building process is going to require energy. So if you notice here, we have one reaction that is releasing energy or yielding energy, and we have another type of reaction that requires it. So one is going to basically provide for the energy needs of the second one. Now, if we look at this picture here, we can see both sides of this. We have the side that talks about catabolism, and in that case, notice that we are going to take energy storage molecules, and that would be all types of food molecules. So we're talking about carbohydrates and various types of lipids or fat molecules here, and those are going to be carefully broken down. And when they're carefully broken down or broken open, the energy is going to come out of those. And what the cell is going to do at that point in time is it's going to take that energy and use it to make ATP. So notice down here, we are making ATP or producing ATP, and ATP is really the energy currency of the cell. So if we produce some ATP, then we will now have the ATP that we need to run those anabolic reactions, which is the other side of this. So if you look at the anabolic reactions, we can see that the ATP is going in, it is being used in that process, and that's because we are going to be building more complex molecules such as different cellular structures. We might be building membranes, we might be just performing certain reactions like cell division, producing new cells, you name it, the cell is going to need to produce a variety of proteins and molecules to accomplish that particular activity that it's performing. Now, many of the reactions that we have inside of the cell are going to involve a transfer of electrons. And the electrons carry energy, and that's really why we're going to be focusing on the electrons in these reactions. Reactions that do transfer electrons are called redox reactions because they do involve both a reduction part and then they also have an oxidation part. So if we look at this diagram right here, we start with a molecule that has an extra electron there, and that molecule is going to lose its electron if you just follow what happens to the orange one on the reactant side and then as we move it over to the product side. So notice that it did lose an electron, and that loss of electron is what we call oxidation. That electron didn't just go away. It actually got transferred or moved to the blue molecule. Notice that the blue molecule on the reactant side does not have the electron, but when we take it and we move it to the product side, now it does have the electron. So that molecule, the blue one, actually gained an electron. When we gain an electron, we call that reduction. So oxidation is losing the electron, reduction is gaining the electron, and notice they're really happening hand in hand with each other. One is losing because somebody else is getting. And so we do call it a redox reaction because you do have those two parts of it kind of constantly occurring side by side. Now, inside of our cells, we are going to have special molecules that we call electron carriers. And their job is to carry electrons from one molecule to another or one cellular location to another. And we'll have three main electron carriers that we do look at as we go through cellular respiration and then also photosynthesis. So these, as they're listed here, these are the simplified names of the electron carriers that we will be dealing with. And all three of these happen to have empty space to hold on to an electron. So when they do gain and hold on to that electron, when they get reduced, we'll see that their name actually changes temporarily. So NAD plus will grab an electron and turn into NADH. That will be the name of it. It'll actually grab two electrons and turn into NADH. And so it does turn into that, and then NADH is going to take that electron and transfer it to another location. And when it does, it turns right back into NAD+. FAD is going to grab electrons and turn into a molecule that we call FADH2. And then it takes those and again transfers them to another location, and we'll see that it changes right back to then the form that does not have the electron, which would be the oxidized form. And NADP plus is going to act similarly, and this one's name will change to NADPH when it's holding on to those electrons, and then it will pass them on and it will turn back into NADP plus. So with all of those, they are really temporarily gaining an electron and then they're giving it back up. And then they will go and they will temporarily get them and then they will give them back up. I personally like to think of them as taxis for electrons. They collect them, deliver them, go back and get more, collect, deliver, and that's basically the cycle that they're going to be constantly performing. If we look at ATP a little bit more, ATP is used to temporarily store energy that is needed for anabolic reactions. The anabolic reactions were the ones that actually required energy. I like to think of ATP as the energy currency of the cell, or in other words, this is how the cell is going to pay for the reactions that require some energy or require some money, if you will. ATP comes in a couple different forms. Some forms are more energetic than others, or they are worth more than others. And if we think of ATP as a battery, ADP is a form of ATP that is not as charged up, so it's not worth as much. And then when the cell has extra energy, it can pack that into the ADP battery and charge it fully. And when we charge it fully, we turn the name into ATP, because the TP stands for triphosphate. There'll actually be 3 phosphate groups in a row on that molecule. So ADP, again, is partially charged. ATP is fully charged. That's what we're really going to be using to run our reactions. And when we do use it for our reactions, we will be draining the energy out, and then later we'll need to charge it back up. And then we'll drain the energy out and we'll charge it back up. So when we drain the energy will be when we're using it for the anabolic reactions. When we charge it up, that's what we would do when we run the catabolic reactions. So again, anabolic and catabolic, it's really hand in hand, those two constantly happening inside of our cells. Here's just a summary of that. So if we start here at the top with the purple square that we see, we will have simple molecules such as glucose, amino acids, some fatty acids here, and then we will run anabolic reactions that will take those simple molecules, relatively simple molecules, and build them into much larger structures and larger molecules. And if we're going to take something small and we're going to build, then it does require energy. So notice here that the ATP is going in. So ATP is being used in this case to power or pay for the anabolic reactions. When we do that, the ATP turns into ADP and phosphate, and that's that drained battery that we have down there. So here we have a drained battery, and if we need to charge that battery back up, we have to have energy to do that. So the catabolic reactions over here are going to provide the energy, so when we run them, we will do the charging, and then we get back to the ATP, which is the fully charged battery. At the same time, when we're running the catabolic reactions, we would be taking the complex molecules, and notice we're taking them and we're breaking them into the little bits and pieces. So that's the cycle of the anabolic and catabolic reactions, and how they're also going to be charging ATP and then draining ATP when they use the energy out of it.